Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is, Tuesday, November 12th. We're going to be talking about the college football playoff rankings that are going to be coming out later today. We are going to release our top 12. Jamie's got his with the automatic bids included. I'm just a top 12, but we'll talk about where our disagreements are with our lists and everything. Before the show, we got a pretty big one right off the top. So that's going to be fun. So we'll talk about that. We'll wrap up Notre Dame versus Florida State. We will talk about some of the injury information that's come out with Howard Cross specifically, and then whatever comes up in the chat and the in questions and comments, things of that nature. Chief Brody is here. Rajon is here as always. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going to go live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And if you've been in our last couple of shows, you will have heard that ESQ Clothing and Ge Wang are bringing a Black Friday special to the masses, exclusive to Irish Sports Daily. Ge Wang is going to match by percentage the number of points that Notre Dame scores against Army. So that will go live on Sunday after the game. If Notre Dame scores 35 points, you'll get 35% off all online items. If they score 50 points, 50% off, right? So you're going to be rooting very heavily for big Notre Dame points in that game. Even more so. Run up the score, right? Upset Todd Blackledge as much as you can. Run up the score in that game and get 50% off all online items. Bomber jackets, sport coats, shirts, whatever you may fancy for your holiday season, for your loved one, for your dad, for your brother, your uncle, whoever it might be. Check out esqclothing.com and head over there after the game on the 23rd against Army for the Black Friday sales. It's really take advantage of that. You're really going to want to do that. Jamie, let's start off with something that just came across the wire. Jason Z making the point. Joe Moore nominated offensive line. Quite the journey from the 6 combined starts going into College Station. If you have not heard, Notre Dame's offensive line was named amongst the Joe Moore Award semifinalists. So there's, I believe there's 8 teams on there, if I recall. Whatever the amount. Notre Dame is a semifinalist.
And there's
10 teams, semifinalists for Notre Dame. It is quite a journey, Jamie, and it's quite an accomplishment. Even I imagine they won't be a finalist, but even to get to this point is fantastic for Joe Rudolph and what he's been able to do in the group, right? Kudos to guys like Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler for filling in. Kudos to Anthony Knapp for holding down the left tackle spot. Emil Wagner et al. Jamie, just some quick comments on Notre Dame being named semifinalist to the Joe Moore Award.
Yeah, I mean, man, huge kudos to all those guys. Especially Joe Rudolph. I mean, I think even if everyone had stayed healthy, kind of being in this kind of mix for this would have been like a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
It's not a year that when you lose Joel and Blake Fisher, even if everybody comes back healthy, you're still looking at a lot of growing pains. And, Jason Z mentioned the 6 starts heading into the season. And then obviously the 6 starts, those guys were hurt versus Purdue. So it's I know you inserted some guys who had more starts, but still they didn't win jobs going into it. So man, just huge kudos to them. They've obviously gone, better as the seasons went on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I would say they're a top 10 line in the country, but obviously the people who do the Joe Moore Award, it's O-line people. It's very these people study.
They take it seriously. They take it
very study. They watch a ton of film. They watch a ton of everybody, and you can see too, they're putting on it. So Army is on it. Tulane is on it. Iowa, I mean, it's not a surprise that like Iowa gets in there, but like,
Yeah.
still, right? They're not going just based on like record. Like, as many people think about like Georgia and like, oh, of course Georgia, because look at all the 5 stars they get. Well,
Yeah.
they're not on it, right? They're not on it. If I was going to say like probably the biggest piece of that is, so they've been giving out the Joe Moore Award since 2015. Every national champion outside of Clemson in 2016 is the only exception. Every national champion has been a semifinalist had an O line that was semifinalist for Joe Moore Award, except for that Clemson.
Mm.
So I would say
Many people would say that's a benchmark, Jamie. To
yes.
make.
So it's definitely like it's something that a couple years ago I wrote about like kind of prerequisites for
Yeah.
what it takes to have like a championship team, and that's like one of the things. So if you're looking at some of the things, it's like it's probably not a good thing for Ole Miss, Georgia, Miami, SMU, BYU, not included, right? So and you would say even then like, oh, man, I don't know about like Miami or SMU or BYU actually being contenders, but like people might say Ole Miss and UGA, and if they did it, they'd be an exception. So, and you'd say good news. I mean, good news for ND, obviously, but good news for ND, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana, right? So, I mean, major props to Indiana too, because it's like they're not getting like highly ranked dudes there, right? So,
Yeah, that's a mismatch
yeah,
of recruits and transfers and that sort of thing. So they've done a really good job. Just some bona fides for Notre Dame. Fifth in the nation in yards per carry at basically six. It's 5.98. You're essentially round that up. 6 yards a carry. And then sixth in the nation. They were fifth in the nation at yards per carry, sixth in the nation in rushing touchdowns. So I think they have 30. So look, one of the best lines. They're 28th overall in sacks allowed, which isn't like the greatest stat, but it's like, like when you're running the ball as well as Notre Dame is, you're going to get some national recognition. It's nice to see that they are. They have like I was looking at this yesterday. Actually, I was not thinking about the Joe Moore Award at all. I was thinking about Notre Dame's top 3 runners, essentially. So rather than because we're thinking about counting stats, right? And we're thinking like no one on the team, like Riley Leonard is now Notre Dame's leading rusher. So we don't think about them, and we look at them play, especially Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. We look at them, it's like these are top backs, but they don't have top back numbers. So I was looking at because they all share so many carries, like Riley Leonard, Jadarian Price, and Jeremiah Love as one player are averaging 28 carries and 182 yards a game. And they've run for 27 touchdowns, right? And I was looking at that. I was like, I wonder how that compares to Ohio State's 3 with Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, and Will Howard, who was supposed to be some kind of a runner, right?
he's a good
And
runner.
he's a good runner, but he's not even close to Riley Leonard this year.
No, he's not. Yeah.
Notre Dame has better numbers than that group does. Those 3 players. So I think we don't think about it like that because of the lack of overall, like no one's had like a 150-yard game or 170-yard game or whatever it might be, but they've been very effective, and so it's nice to see that they're getting recognized for that. So it was something that just came across the wire today, so wanted to shout that out. Thank you for the comment from Jason Z there. The very good contribution. Rajon, sadly, rest in peace, Gerry Faust. The one-time Notre Dame head coach, Gerry Faust, passed away yesterday. The news broke at 89 years old. I think the overwhelming sentiment from everyone involved is he was a great man, loved Notre Dame. His tenure did not work out as much as everyone would have wanted, but he was a the term Notre Dame man comes out a lot, and I believe he was that. And so it's nice to see that people are recognizing that. And by all accounts, a life well lived. Any thoughts for you there, Jamie?
Yeah, obviously legendary high school coach at Moeller as well, and I actually coached with the guy who played for him at Akron, and loved him. and said he was an awesome guy and a great man, and one of those guys who like made an impact on a lot of people's lives. And um, I think he was, someone too. Like it's rare. If you look at, say, like his life and how he's perceived by like Notre Dame fans
Mhm.
overall, and compare it to some other guys who didn't obviously do well at Notre Dame and kind of had similar struggles. Um, I think you look at Gerry Faust and how he's viewed, and I think while there's acknowledgement that probably he wasn't ready for the job or the right person for the job at that time. There's just so many people who have so much respect for him, and the kind of like the way he carried himself, and how much like people liked him, and that matters in life too. So yeah, definitely rest in peace to by all accounts a great guy.
Yeah. Steven Shulkowski makes the point. Faust recruited Notre Dame's last Heisman Trophy winner and many other NFL stars. Tim Brown had a post. I believe it was he posted it either on Twitter or Instagram and then sent it to Twitter, but talked about how Tim Brown said no one wanted him. That his high school team won 3 games in 4 years or 4 games in 3 years, whatever it was. And he said people weren't interested in him, and Gerry Faust brought him to Notre Dame, won a Heisman Trophy for Notre Dame, and Stephen points out it's the last one that Notre Dame has had. So definitely left his mark, and people remember him fondly, despite how his overall tenure went from a wins and losses standpoint. So it's nice to hear all the nice words said about Gerry Faust. Where was I going to go with this? Oh, news and notes. More news and notes. Notre Dame picked a commitment from Nolan James, the running back from New Jersey. We can show more of his stats. Jamie, you did a film, Don't Lie on him. Tell us about Nolan James. I'll roll some clips here and then talk about Nolan James and what this means to the Notre Dame football class.
Yeah, so I mean, for everybody, I think probably knows that he was a BC commit, right? So this is a guy that obviously Notre Dame came in and stole late, and this is the kind of guy that I think you're going to look at it. There is like Audric Estime potential with him, right? In terms of just like a late commitment, a guy who was like, oh, he's going to Michigan State, and people liked him, but they weren't like in love with him at the time, thinking that he was going to be like better than Will Shipley, who they should have got earlier, whatever, right? And obviously he had an awesome career at Notre Dame, and now he's in the league and doing well. He got was the lead back for Denver this weekend. Man, Nolan James, I think you see it too, right? Like this is a guy who's great balance after contact, tremendous feet. Yeah. Don't have like testing markers for him. Watch this run here specifically, like just incredible. Just like make a guy miss in a phone booth. Really like good acceleration after his cuts. I would say that like some of the stuff with some of these cuts too, like when you're in traffic. I mean, you always like to see guys finish runs like that. Maybe he'll have to be a little bit more one cut and go with some of these kind of things, but like, man, two things that I think are so valuable, and I think that Notre Dame fans obviously recognize are so valuable too, is the ability to make guys miss and be able to gain yards after contact. That is huge. That is almost like should be number 1 and number 2 at like the top of the list for running backs, right? Because there's a lot of dudes who can run really fast, and there's a lot of guys that, like, if you look at, say, like some of those like Chip Kelly Oregon offenses, like the LaMichael James types guys, if they got a seam, forget it, they're gone, right? But there's a reason why LaMichael James never really did anything in the league or anything, because he wasn't like a great back. He was just like a total fast speed, like just go guy, right? And I think if you look at where Notre Dame runs with a lot of zone runs, I think he's a really good zone runner. He's got the feet for it. He's got the vision for it. I think he's definitely underrated where he's at right now. There's a chance that he could get bumped up to a 4-star later on. Maybe he won't because he doesn't have like the testing markers and people love that. But if you just look at his film, you just looked at senior film on top of that, and obviously he's put up like big numbers. Former receiver too, so he can catch the ball pretty well and all that. You saw some of that screen work too. Man, he's a good back. I think it's a really good pickup for Notre Dame.
Yeah, and he does like, so there's the Aeneas Williams everyone kind of compared him to Kyron Williams because of the St. Louis thing, and he was smaller guy. This to me is the comp to Kyron, because the feet that you talked about, like being able to make quick cuts and little shifty moves in the hole amongst traffic, right? Like that was a Kyron, like that's a superpower. You see it in NFL, right? Like Kyron is still doing that, and that is his superpower, and that is something that Nolan James is very able to do really well as well. Similar, they don't have that big home run. Like once they get out in the open, it's like, oh, he's gone, right? Like you don't have that sense, but at the same time, like Kyron Williams, very, very productive back for Notre Dame. He's a very, very productive back in the NFL, right? That skill set lends itself to really good production, whatever level you're at. So it's a very good pickup for Notre Dame. They really needed this caliber of back in their class. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about recruiting probably on the next show, because there's a lot of updates, and Christian and Matt are still bringing out the information, and there's been a lot of good information from them. So head over to irishsportsdaily.com and get their updates. Christian has running updates on those guys. Matt had some notes that came out yesterday that are on the board, so you're going to want to look at those. Some really good info. Beefeater ND08 and sportsmanlike hit and hustle penalty on him for not hustling to get here, and late hit on the thumbs up. Listen, look, sometimes you have a bad day, right? Riley Leonard had a little bit of a bad day on Saturday. You step up and you try to get better in the future. So Beefeater ND08. Speaking of that, Jamie, this isn't a very good because we're still in the notes portion of the show, but Riley Leonard, I think he's got like he's a basketball player. I think he's got like the streaky shooter thing going on a little bit. Like he's a guy who, like, he has a good run of games, and then he'll have like the 0 for 7, like from 3. And it's like, what's this about? Like, this is a terrible game. I think he gets that a little bit. Like he gets upset. You could tell him, like, his body language, he gets mad about stuff. And it's like, he kind of carries that throughout the game. And it just like, he almost gets in a mood. Like someone needs to like snap him out of it or a little bit. Cause I feel like he carries his emotions a little too much. And I think it affects him on this, like a little bit of the, on the margins, I don't like that. What do you think, James?
I think maybe in this game he did. You could kind of see, obviously, whenever only with the quarterback after a play do you like close up on a guy's face when he makes a bad throw, right? So it's like you really kind of see it. But I didn't think he was like that in the his previous 3 games before the bye. So I didn't think that was I didn't think like he had some bad throws, but I think like he came back from that. This game reminded me a lot of a Ian Book type of game.
Yeah.
I mentioned it on Power.
Yeah.
It's just like where it was like he makes some throws and you're like, man, that was a good throw. And then you make some throws and you're like, yeah, that was a yuck, right? Like just bad mechanics, just whatever. And then he makes like a great play running, and then another play where he's like, he's got kind of happy feet here. That was extreme on the Ian Book scale,
Yeah.
But but at the same time, it was very much like the Bill Connolly rankings got that dog in him, because it was like, oh yeah, he's still like running and doing all that too.
It's fine. You know what's I was watching when you watched the game back. I think I referenced it on the post game too. It was the second drive. It was the second drive, definitely. He had just thrown the ball on the run to Jeremiah Love, and he dropped it. And then they ran the swing route. I think it was to Price. And it was like nothing Riley Leonard did wrong. He threw the swing route, like it's whatever. But it was not well executed, and they lost 3 yards. And the camera pans to him, and he mouths like 3 F-bombs to himself. And I'm like, what are you mad about? Like it's
okay. I actually wanted to talk to you about this play.
Okay.
Because At first, I thought that Chris Mitchell, I'm like, why didn't he block that guy? I'm like, well, no,
Jaden
because it
Harrison
wasn't,
too.
or Jaden Harrison. Sorry,
Yeah, Jaden
Jaden
Harrison.
Harrison.
Yeah.
That's who I was thinking of. But that was not the play.
I don't know
It
what that
was.
play was, to be
I
honest.
know exactly what it was.
Okay.
After watching it a million times, they went and put him in motion, and it was zone. It was zone. It was
Yeah.
not man.
He thought he'd get man. Yeah.
He thought he thought he'd get man, and it was zone. And Harrison was supposed to, when that guy didn't go with him, he was supposed to hook up there.
Okay.
And because
Because
if you look at
Flanagan hooked up.
Flanagan did.
Yeah.
He was supposed to hook up there. So I believe it was on Harrison, but not for the not blocking.
Right.
And then really what should have happened is Leonard should have thrown that in the seats. Like that should have just been, you screwed up this play. I'm throwing this just
or
run it or whatever, tuck it and run, because that was not, it was set up to be a tackle for loss, unless Price just made that guy miss. But it was set up to be a tackle for loss because of that. So I believe it was Harrison screw up. He should have known this is zone. I got to hook up here, because he ran vertical, and the safety just came and picked him up, and that was not.
He didn't really run a route, and I don't know who the outside receiver was. I don't know if it was Mitchell or who it was, but they didn't really run a route either. Like it was just kind of like they ran out there and they just kind of turned around, like, like I think
they were expecting man.
They were expecting the runoff players, and that's not what happened.
But I think Flanagan did what he was supposed to do.
Correct.
And that's why he was like, what? Why is that guy, like, you can kind of see his face.
Yeah.
So, I think it was a screw up, and it looks like one of those things. And I think that's why he was saying it, like, Leonard was just like, and he's not going to bust. Yes. And I don't think Leonard is the kind of guy, or at least I don't get the vibes that he's going to like chew a guy out for screwing up. That's just not his personality. But if this was like, if that was Tom Brady, they would have chewed out Jaden Harrison for that play.
Yeah. So that's fine. Anyway, fun Riley Leonard discussion there. Last bit of news. Howard Cross is going to be out this week. We kind of talked about that after the game. It seemed pretty obvious to me he was going to not play against Virginia. Kurt Hinish is going to step up. Or not Kurt Hinish. Donovan Hinish is going to step up. Gabe Rubio has got to step up. Armel Mukum's going to get more time if needed. It might be a shorter rotation against Virginia, which isn't the greatest thing. So that's going to be something to monitor as Notre Dame goes forward. What you might get is, let's say Hinish starts next to Mills, and then they all kind of rotate in. So it's like three guys. One guy sits a series, the other two are in, and then kind of as a circular motion. You might see that on the interior, depending on how much they trust Mukum in this game. But that's something to monitor. We'll see on Howard Cross whether he can, get back for Army. Whether Notre Dame needs him there. I was listening to you and Mike talk about Army. You didn't seem super impressed with their situation. But look, they're going to run inside. So you do want your best inside players in that game. But look, Gabe Rubio's big body, right? Riley Mills is obviously a very big body. So that's going to be something.
I just want to mention, because people keep bringing up Brandon Vernon. Guys, he's not in the mix, guys.
He's not in the mix. He's not in the mix.
Yeah, he's on the scout team. I at this point, people should have low expectations for him ever playing.
Yeah,
at this point, it's just kind of what it is, right? Like he's been in the program for a while. Gabe Rubio was hurt, and there was other injuries. Like there were chances to kind of get in the mix there, and he hasn't really done it. So that's just kind of what it is. I mean, yeah, like Beefeater asked about Sean Seviano. I mean, I don't think Sean Seviano is ready to play. He still needs to get to lose some LBs and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But when they were putting guys in for the first batch of like garbage time, it was Mukum and Seviano.
Yeah.
So like Greg said, expect Mukum if they play an extra guy. Mukum would be the first guy, and then probably Seviano after that.
All right. All right. Let's do the rankings, Jamie. I'm going to get mine up here and then we'll talk about it, right? Maybe controversial, maybe not. I don't know. I doubt people will like it. All right. My top 12. Let me get rid of this banner so you can see the 12th. Here we go. Greg's top 12. All right. I think Oregon and Ohio State 1 and 2. I got Texas at 3. To be honest, to me, Texas at 3 is just an indication of I don't know that there's like really great teams at the top anymore, right? I don't even think Ohio State's that great of a team at number
No.
2, frankly. And look, BYU, I'll tell you why I have BYU at 4. It's not that I think they're the 4th best team or whatever. I sometimes when you make these rankings, you do talk a little bit both sides out of both sides of your mouth a little bit. So I'm going to try to limit that. But look, they're undefeated. I think they did look, they should have lost last week to Utah. I think. What do you think of that call, by the way? We haven't talked about
I
it.
thought it was a bad call.
Okay.
I thought, especially
I'm
because that's, I mean, not that a little bit unhinged by the Utah AD to go after the first of all, majorly unhinged to go after the Big 12 as a conference.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure they're getting huge fines for that.
Yeah.
But there was absolutely like a, hey, I'm making this call, the way the call, like, especially that, because this game wasn't at BYU. It was at
Right.
Utah. So you expect the home cooking. And that was the opposite of that. It was, I don't think it was a call. I mean, I don't think that call should have been called at any time in a game, let alone the final play of the game. I thought it was a bad call. And yeah, I don't know. It sucks.
It's unbecoming. It's unbecoming for this level of the sport. Yeah, that's the type of thing you see in your JV high school, with 30 people in the stands. Like, this is high level football. Okay. It didn't prevent anything. The ball's never going there. The play was blown up. It's just that this is big boy football that can't be called. But I have BYU at 4. And the reason I do is because they've actually beaten teams. They beat Kansas State. They beat SMU. Like, those are real wins, right? Like, that is more than Miami's done. That is more than Penn State has done. You'll see Penn State's at 11. Like, that's more than them. That's more than Indiana's done, like, by far. Like, to me, it's one thing for me to think I think Tennessee, I think everyone below BYU, if they were to play, I would think that or like whoever it is would beat them, to be honest. But they did play good teams and they won those games. And so you have to credit that. They did win, right? And so look, I'm gonna put them there. Like, it is what it is. They've played the teams, they've played much better schedules than some of these other teams. And so I'm gonna credit that. I just am. I have Tennessee at 5. I have Notre Dame at 6. Ahead of Alabama. I have Indiana at 8. Look, I know everyone loves Indiana and everything. And look, it's a great story and kudos to them at the same time. The 20-15 against Michigan, it was a huge game for Indiana. It was a nothing game for Michigan. Indiana has 16 yards in the second half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, what do you want me to do? You want me to throw you a party? Huh? You want me to invite Joe Klatt? I can't get behind it. You have 16 yards second half in a game you must have. Michigan's 5-4. They're a terrible program. Like, they're in shambles of a program, and
their offense stinks.
It's one of the worst offenses in college football. Just period. Look at Alabama. Like, I get it. They have 2 losses, but they also have some of the best wins in the game right now. Same thing with Tennessee. Like, they have their loss, right? And it's not a great loss, but at the same time, like, you beat Alabama. You got to have credit for that. Ole Miss and Georgia ahead of Penn State. Again, they have losses. Georgia's got one of the best wins of the season. Ole Miss has one of the best wins of the season. Like Penn State has some of the best nothing of the season. I don't even think they have a good loss. Like 20-13 in that game.
I mean, they were in whatever. They had chances to score, whatever. So I think it is a good loss. Like it's,
I don't think it's that good.
It's not great, but it's not like, I don't like, if you look at it just from the chance, they had a chance to win the game. Like, so, I mean, I'll give them at least that. But yeah, they don't have their wins, like their best win is USC, in my opinion, like, which is pretty bad.
And they were on the way to losing. Multiple fourth down conversions saved them in that game. And their little Trixie Dixie throwing to the tight end when he's the center and stuff. Which, like, to me, that's also like Mickey Mouse. Like, I don't like Mickey Mouse teams like that, where it's like your whole operation depends on it. Like, I don't like that. And then I've got Boise State at 12. Look, Boise State might have the best loss of the entire year, losing by 3 on the road to Oregon, where that game was back and forth. Like, they matched Oregon's scores in that game. Now, granted, I don't think Oregon was playing as well at that time of year, but still, it was a back and forth game. It was a very entertaining game. They were able to run on Oregon. I thought that was a very good job by Boise State. They have a win against Washington State, which is their only win of the season. They have a nice win against UNLV, who's 7-2 right now. So look, I got Boise State. Miami did not make my top 12. I'm sorry. Why would they be in? Not only did they lose to Georgia Tech, they've been on the way to lose multiple times to teams that are just not great. And I just, over the course of their season, they have shown that they are closer to not being very good than they are to being good. You know, I mean, look, everyone's impressed with that Florida win at the beginning. Like, great. Congratulations. Like, Florida's awful, you know? And so what have they done? What is their good win? What is the proof that they are actually a good football team? I don't know that it exists. So that's my that's my top 12. Jason's asking my projected ACC champ. I didn't want to get into all that stuff. I'll get into, like, and I think this should be a weekly thing, Jamie, by the way, when we rank our teams, because it's, you know, it's topical. People like to talk about this. As we get closer and the picture becomes a little bit more clear, then we'll I'll actually do the thing where I add you know, the automatic bids and things of that nature. So that's where I'm at, Jamie. You can do your top 12. I think you did add the automatic bids, and then we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it, Jamie. Where are you at?
Yeah, so I did the automatic bids. I will just say that out of the automatic, like, no ACC team would be in the top 12 for me if it wasn't.
Okay.
And Boise State also wouldn't be in the top 12 if it wasn't either. And BYU I would have at 10 if they were not the automatic bids.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you before, because we have a big disagreement on BYU, and I'm not married to my take, so it's fine. Why the discrepancy? Why are the wins not enough to push them higher?
Well, they squeaked by SMU, which SMU really, if you think about it, they have one good win.
Yes.
They have one good win, Louisville. And
yes.
Many
people are saying Louisville's a great football team. Many people are saying that.
Louisville's pretty. I think Louisville's a pretty good football team. They're perfectly fine as a top 20 to 30 football team. I think that's totally fair of where kind of I would put them.
Agree.
But I don't think that you know, if you look at like some of these other games and how they've played, they haven't played that well. And I think that's the same for SMU. That's the same for BYU. And because I think you got to kind of judge not just who they beat and who they lost to, but also like, are they good? Like you're actually, you know, looking at like, you're projecting where these teams are too. And I mean, I just wouldn't project either of those teams up there. Like
BYU's metrics are not the best.
if you put them against another schedule, I think they'd have, more losses. And I think first of all, I think the Big 12 is trash.
It's not
It's
good.
totally trash. Like I think like even Kansas State, I think is a decent team, but it's like they're in that mucky middle. They're not.
Well, Kansas State's, I think, best win is Colorado, right? It's another Big 12 team.
Which is another team that, like, if Colorado, which they do have a chance to, make the Big 12 championship game, and then they would get in with automatic berth, like, come on, that's not a team that's actually in the, it's not a top 20 team in real life, like, so it's one of those things where just the Big 12, when you beat these teams, even like, Iowa State, which just showed like, yeah, they were undefeated. It's like, yeah, they're really not that good. Like they just, have
smelly.
Yeah. So anyways, I'll go through my thing with the automatic bids. So Oregon, I have it won. Obviously, they're undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
Wins against Ohio State, Boise State, those are good wins, right?
Good wins.
I do think obviously they've benefited from an easy schedule. And somebody asked earlier, sorry, I forgot who, but it was like, all these teams that have had, Penn State, Oregon, Indiana. It's like, oh yeah, like they've had these things. Well, one of them is one of the reasons why their schedule has looked, a lot easier is because Washington, DeBoer didn't stay at Washington. So they lost all these guys. They basically have like a total makeshift O-line, and they had to change so much. They were already losing a bunch from last year, and then they lost a ton in the portal, whatever. So it's really kind of like a rebuilding team. It's not like the same Washington. If Washington was just like, if DeBoer was there and they would have added who they've added, like there were guys who were supposed to transfer there that didn't end up transferring, they'd be like a top 20 to 30 team. And that'd be a tougher game for all those teams.
Right.
And, they probably would win one of those games or something like that. Right. So that's one of it. And then they've just avoided some of these other teams. And the other thing is like, so Indiana, it's like, well, people thought Michigan wasn't going to be this bad, but it's like they stink. So it's like, well, and if you have that on the schedule, and it's like, Texas before at the beginning of the season, people are like, man, that's a big win for Texas going on the road to Michigan. It's like, turns out Michigan stinks, and like, that's why you have to kind of judge it later. Right. So anyway, sorry, that was a total tangent, but someone mentioned it before in the comments. So 2, I have Tennessee at 2. Okay. Because they too have not
top
played.
SEC team.
Yes. They're, obviously the SEC, it's so fluid of who can kind of finish where and all that. But I just think I put them over Texas because I think that Bama win is better than any Texas win. So I think
that's indisputable.
Yes. So that's why I had them. So and they had lost to Arkansas, which isn't good, but they lost a close game on the road to Arkansas.
They lost on the road in the SEC the way teams lose on the road in the SEC, like good teams.
Yeah. And obviously they got a huge game this weekend. They win it. That's where they're going to be anyways. Right. So I think, but if they lose it, then they'll drop. Right. And obviously, so 3 with the automatic bid, I have BYU as a higher automatic bid than the ACC team. Miami, I still have at 4 above SMU. Just because objectively, like both of them, they don't have both of them, their best win is Louisville. Right. And obviously they've squeaked by a lot of other games, where it's there. But if I was going to say, if they were going to play, and they might, and it looks like they're probably going to play in the ACC championship game, I would pick Miami just because I think it'll be a shootout and Miami will just score more. But I think it's close, right? So it's like if you told me, hey, I'm going to put SMU there, fine. no qualms about it.
Mhm.
So Ohio State, I have at 5. They really, if you look at it, they don't have great wins. I mean, Penn State is their best win. You beat Penn State on the road. It's a good win.
I think that's very similar. Like I said, I think I liken Penn State to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
We give Notre Dame a lot of credit for that, and so the score was very similar. So that's how I view it. Yeah.
And the Oregon game too, on the road, that's a game could have gone either way.
I mean, look, if they
Iowa
don't call
is
if they don't call the offensive PI, they're going to win. Like they're going to win the
yes,
game. So
yes,
to your point, please
yeah.
continue.
Bama, I have at 6.
Okay.
And I know that might seem like, oh, they have 2 losses, right? But they were both close losses to Tennessee and to Vandy. And Vandy has proven to be better than people think. Now all of a sudden it looked horrible at the time. You're like, well, they
And
haven't
it
lost to
was right
Vandy.
after Georgia too,
It
right?
was
Like they
right
had,
after
yeah.
that. I mean, I think that, they beat Georgia. Like you said, South Carolina, that's a good win.
It
South
is a good
Carolina is a
win.
good team.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they just went out and whooped LSU on the road, like they just absolutely
No one's
destroyed
done
them.
that to LSU.
No one has beaten LSU like that because LSU had close losses in those other games,
Mhm.
right? So to me, that's there. And if you look at Texas, who I have at 7, Vandy and Oklahoma are their best wins. That's like I said, Vandy's a pretty good team and obviously whatever, but it was like not a convincing win. That was like a win that it could easily was very similar to that Alabama game.
Yeah.
Could have gone either way. And Oklahoma, I mean, Oklahoma's yuck, man. They stink. So if
They're stinky smelly as well. I
yeah,
mean, they're like USC almost.
yeah, and
In
they
some ways
obviously
worse.
lost to Georgia at home. That's their only loss. But then again, that's really like the only like big team that they played. I have Notre Dame at 8. So it means that I would have had Notre Dame at 6 where you had them in
Okay.
the regular thing if you took out
Got
the
you.
automatic bids. Which I have them behind Texas because if you look at it, you'd say, well, A&M and Louisville are better wins than Vandy and Oklahoma. Yeah, sure. But yeah, okay, you do have the NIU loss that is there. It is a stinky, smelly loss. It's bad.
Yep.
But I think the main thing is that, and this is where the schedule does have to play into it a little bit. Notre Dame has had a really easy schedule. They've had a much easier schedule than a lot of these teams. That even if Texas hasn't had like a gauntlet of a schedule, they're 3-1 versus F plus top 40. Notre Dame is 2-0. They've only played 2 games versus top 40 teams. They won both those games, right? They beat
Yeah.
Louisville and Texas A&M, and they're going to play Army and USC, who are 2 top 40 teams. But if you think about it, you're probably only going to have 4 games against the top 40 all year. Like that's a pretty easy schedule.
You're getting crowned a little bit.
Yes, they're winning by what they should, so that's why they're where they are, and also because of those wins, that's why I have them above Indiana, who I have at 9. The best wins are Nebraska and Michigan. They beat the brakes off Nebraska. Fine, right? Because obviously Nebraska is not terrible, but still they're not good,
Right?
and that's your best win. And then obviously, I mean the Michigan win was very red flaggy, very red flaggy, and it is because you haven't played enough good teams for it to be like, well, this is just an average team that you squeaked by. So to me, if they get boat raced by Ohio State, it's over for Indiana to me.
Get them out
They're
of
out.
there.
They're not in the top because that's really their only chance. If they have a close loss to Ohio State, you could say, okay, yeah, fine. They could still get the benefit out because they have the one loss and they've won convincingly and they've played well enough. Okay, fine. They squeak in as like an 11 seed or so, whatever, right? But I don't know. They just haven't had the schedule. It's like so they've played no one like those are their two best wins. Those are the only teams they played in like the top like 50 is Nebraska and Michigan. Like that's not good. That's not good enough. Like you got to play some more, and then they aren't really playing anybody else because you have you have Ohio State, and that's it. Like they don't have like they're playing Purdue, and then I can't remember one other crappy team that's like on their list, and because they played no one from out of conference, and shout out to Chris Wilson who pointed out too that like they had scheduled Louisville and they backed out of it.
Yeah,
don't back out of those games. And I understand they're probably thinking that
they didn't think it would matter, right?
They didn't think it would matter. I understand that, but it's just like think about Miami now too. It's like Miami backs out of that Notre Dame game. And I understand it. It's like, you could it's not Notre Dame's fault that Miami backed out of that game, So I think that is something that I don't know if the committee actually thinks about that stuff, but they should.
Yeah.
They should kind of think about it and let those ADs know, like, hey, guess what? You actually had a tougher schedule, but you didn't.
Yeah.
Penn State, I have at 10.
Okay.
So obviously, like I said, their best win is USC. Illinois, who was a fraud top 25 team for just a tiny bit. Illinois is stinky.
It's 21-7 too. Come on.
21-7. They're 57th in F+. Georgia Tech is 49th. And I promise you, if they were playing each other, who's picking Illinois in that game? Most people are picking Georgia Tech.
Right.
I think Georgia Tech's a better football team. So, no, you don't get credit for that. Basically, Penn State is on the strength of it being close. Against
the only thing they have is a close loss this year. That's it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Penn State doesn't really play anyone tough to kind of end the season. So they just kind of got to kind of win and they're in, unfortunately. But that's just kind of what it is. They're getting the benefit of the doubt of it. Is it fair? Probably not. Like Old Miss, who I have at 11, would I pick Old Miss if they played Penn State? Yes. 100% would. But I'm just basically they have 2 losses, and one is, and if they were like good losses, I mean, the close loss to LSU, I mean, it's a close loss, whatever, right? But the one to Kentucky is gross. Kentucky's not good. They're not good. But they get obviously you beat Georgia. That's a good win. South Carolina, that's a good win. Speaking of Arkansas, who was beat Tennessee. And I say yeah, that is a tough thing. Well, they wrecked Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something to kind of, keep in mind there.
Right.
So Boise State, who is the automatic, group of 5, they're at 12. So as of today, obviously this has changed, whatever. Georgia would not be in the top 12. And sorry, but that's just what it is. You basically, Georgia could have just won. All Georgia actually has to do is win. I mean, now they have to win all the rest of their games.
Right.
But out of their schedule, and you assume they're going to be Georgia Tech, and they're probably playing some other little sisters of the poor right before that, because that's what all SEC teams do right before it. But they obviously have the big game this weekend,
Tennessee,
and they had the big game last weekend against Ole Miss. And essentially all they got to do is win one of those 2 and they're in.
Yeah.
So they win this week, guess what? You're going to be back in there, but they are first out for me at the moment. And unfortunately too, it's just a fact. They haven't played well. Carson Beck, it's a problem. It's a problem.
He had 17 touchdown passes and 12 picks.
Yes.
That's not it. That is that. Look, it's totally defensible to have them out. That's a bad loss. It's a really bad loss. They did not look good. They had 1 touchdown drive that was 20-something yards because of the interception on the first play by Ole Miss. 1 touchdown drive in the whole game. That's That's bad. Like, that's really not good. Like you said, he doesn't look. Carson Beck does not look good. The running game doesn't look great. They have Arian Smith at wide receiver and kind of nothing else. Like, Georgia is their D line is scary. I get it, right? That is a
Yeah.
scary D line. And
The defense is great.
The thought of Notre Dame going up against that defensive line is truly concerning. And it's just like, man, but the offense is
But
bad
yes,
enough to where it's like, geez,
where
like,
it's
I don't
like,
know, man.
I mean, I think you would have said probably 6 weeks ago, just because you anticipated Georgia being Georgia, you would have
Yeah.
just said, well, Beck's pretty good. And they got those hosses on the line and the running game. They're going to run it down Notre Dame's throat. I mean, I'm sorry. They just, it's not the same Georgia that it was a few years ago. They're just not that team right now. And especially too, like, I don't know who the line coach is now. I probably should know, but like, buddy, you got to do better with the material you got.
Yeah.
I mean, you got you got like a bunch of freakazoids there. Be better, man. And I understand you're going against some pretty good defensive lines, but be better. Be better. They should be better than they are.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the win in Texas is a great win. It's a great win. And obviously, it would have changed if they would have won that Bama game. Sure. But they've just how they've played in the last month has not been good. And they just lost to Ole Miss. And guess what? They can bounce back and beat Tennessee. They'll get back in. But if they lose to Tennessee, it's done, man. It's done. A 3-loss Georgia team has no business being in it because they haven't played well. It's not like they've done enough to do it. Yeah. So, I mean, I would have them above A&M right now, who I have at 14. If I'm just talking about the next teams out. So their best win is LSU and then Mizzou. And they obviously beat the crap out of Mizzou. But they lost to South Carolina pretty convincingly. And even if you think about the ND game, I mean, they lost pretty bad in the fourth quarter at home. Mm-hmm. And I understand, guys who are on the Cover 3 podcast want to talk about how they're a better team than they were now. They didn't look that much better against South Carolina.
That is not. I give no credence to that. Every team gets better. Notre Dame's different. You can't play it like that.
Yeah,
you
like
just cannot.
It's stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah,
You're just
Notre Dame is a far better team.
It's just one of those things to like people use to like, hey, I had this argument before, so I'm just gonna bring this
up.
And
by the way, A&M was favored and everyone picked them. So, like, don't give me this garbage about, A&M's different. Excuse me. You thought day of game they were better. You picked them. They were favored. Go away. That argument needs to die a slow death or a quick death or whatever you want to talk about. All right, so there's your top 12. Let's talk about Notre Dame's ceiling, right? Let's talk about the ceiling of this. Ceilings are important. You don't want mid. You want to talk about what it could be. You want that with your football team and your media company. You want a high ceiling with your media company. If you want the highest ceiling possible, go with VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sarazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. So in your iteration, you have Notre Dame at 8, Indiana at 9. Notre Dame would be hosting Indiana, and the winner of that game gets Oregon, who is your number 1 seed. Obviously, look, I think the question was asked, what would Notre Dame be if they were if they had beaten NIU, NIU hits the upright or whatever. Notre Dame would be well, they would be fifth, right? Because they
They'd be
can't get a
fifth.
bye. But
Yeah.
they would be ranked second. I think they would easily be ranked second, behind Oregon. So that Oregon would be 2, Notre Dame would be Oregon would be 1, Notre Dame would be 2.
I mean, they might put Ohio State there because it was like the close loss or something. And
I don't think there's any chance of that because ostensibly, because they are essentially putting Ohio State there anyway. You know what I mean? Like they want Ohio State to get that bye, and so they'll get it because of the situation. That's why they can put Notre Dame at 2. Like they're undefeated. Like I think they would do it. Even with, because like Notre Dame's best win would be just as good as Ohio State's best win, in my opinion. So that's what that is. Either way, is Oregon, let's just use it, is Oregon, because if they're the number 1 team, then that's the ceiling that you're looking to get to, in my opinion. Is Oregon so good that Notre Dame can't beat them on a neutral field? Would you be afraid of that? Like in the way that you were afraid of 2020 Alabama or 2019 LSU or 2018 Clemson? Are they of that caliber? I don't know that that's true.
No, I don't think so. I don't think any of these teams are, to be honest.
Right.
I don't think that there's like, if you look at that Alabama offense in 2020, like they were just so loaded.
They had 4 players in the Heisman running.
And it wasn't even just that, because they had like 3 first-round picks in the whole line. And it just like, and obviously the defense was just, frighteningly good too, right? So, and like Patrick Surtain, you couldn't even throw at him. Like you couldn't throw at him. Like it was just like, might as well give up. Like it was
right.
These other teams, I mean, they got good players. I'm just saying they don't have that, right? Or they don't have like Clemson 28, that defensive line. Like they don't have that, and also like Isaiah Simmons and a couple for first and second round corners and like T. Higgins and Trevor Lawrence and just there isn't a quarterback as good as Trevor Lawrence. It wasn't in college. There's not a quarterback this year that's I would say it's even close to that. There's not like a generational, a Joe Burrow, whatever. There's not an LSU 2019 offense. There's not that. I don't think there's like, even if like Ohio State 2014, and if you look at like how loaded that team was, I just don't think that there's that team that's there either. So I don't think. I think it would be different if you were playing Oregon at Oregon in Autzen.
Yeah,
that obviously makes that game much harder. The fact that it's neutral. I mean, I'm not saying that Oregon wouldn't be favored or people wouldn't pick Oregon or shouldn't pick Oregon in that game, but it's definitely not as different where you're like, man, I don't know how Notre Dame's going to win this game. I think there are ways for them to win in each of these games, because if I look at it and I'm like, I can see Dylan Gabriel having a tough time against Al Golden Steve.
For sure. Yeah.
And I can see, Oregon's defense is pretty good. But I don't think like they're that, like the difference between like Oregon and Texas A&M's defense, negligible. You know what I mean? Like it's and I would probably say, I mean, defensive line wise, I think Oregon's got a good defensive line, but I don't think they have as many scary dudes as as Texas A&M does. So I just think that like that'd probably be a close game. And I think ideally you want to get to, somebody asked about, would you rather have Notre Dame be you want them to have a home game, so
right.
7 or 8, no matter what, if you're playing like the 2 or the 1 after, that's not ideal for the next round, but you want to have that home game, because playing that game on the road, it's so much harder. And it's going to be the first ever playoff game, home game for the crowd is going to be nuts for those games. Like those are going to be tough games, no matter who you're playing, right? So, I think you want to get 5 to 8. If you can get there, great. But I mean, obviously, ideally, 5 or 6, and then playing the ACC or Big 12, like then you're like, man,
now you're in real good position.
Now you're in a great because and then you're not even going to, because I actually think too, like, which kind of sucks because it'd be pretty cool if, like, let's say BYU wins the Big 12. It'd be pretty cool if BYU had a home game. Like, first of all, for anyone who knows too, like that is like it's high elevation. It is a pretty rowdy crowd. Like that would be nuts. That would be nuts. And that would actually be really cool. And I think like a lot of teams would have a much harder time there than you think and would give BYU a way better chance to win that game, even if it was like a bad matchup for them. But if it's like, if that game's in Florida or wherever the heck it is, the Rose Bowl or whatever, I mean, I think whoever is going to play them in the next game is probably going to be favored pretty heavily, right? So, I think that it's one of those things where you want to get, like, even so, I have Tennessee at 2. So if they win this game, and then they, this week, and then they win the SEC, they're going to be 2, right? But their defense is really, really good, but their offense, like that could be like a very low scoring kind of like turnovers can win the game kind of deal. Like, so that's just one of those things too, where I don't know if like there's teams you would want to play less, like Old Miss to me is like would be a scary team to match up against, just because of the type of offense. And they got a really good defense too. Bama and Georgia, they do have a lot of dudes still. Like those are tough teams, whatever. It's not, and Ohio State, because they have some freaks who could just like be silent the whole game. And then all of a sudden Jeremiah Smith is, taking a slant 80 to the crib, right? Like,
right.
Those are scary teams to play. I just don't think it's as daunting as any of those other previous years, like you said.
Right. Like, I think there's like Oregon, like Oregon would be favored, rightly so, right? Like, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many, like all the teams you mentioned, like very tough games, very difficult games. Where it's like, this is tough for Notre Dame. This is a tough matchup. This is a tough matchup. But it's not that situation where you think, I don't know how they're going to do this. Like, how are they going to keep it within 3 touchdowns kind of thing, right? Like, that's kind of not what's out there in 2024. But there are games, like I think of Oregon, I think of Ohio State, where it's like, I really wish we had Ben Morrison for that one. I really wish you had Boubacar and Botelho for those games. Like, you just need it, right? Make sure you get to, get to the point where Howard Cross is healthy again, or feeling better. But I think it's important for Notre Dame to realize, and Marcus Freeman has kind of touched on this a little bit, where it's like Notre Dame has agency in how the rest of this goes, right? You can always just wreck teams. And I think it's not a situation where I don't want the team or whoever, I don't know that this is their mindset. I'm just, how fans talk about it is like, Notre Dame has just got to squeak through these games. Like, no. You need to go out there and start thinking about something that Olivia Miles said to me when I talked to her on the Dimes with Dara pod. And I talked to her about expectations, and she used the phrase of walk in the habits of a national champion. And I think that, I hope that's the Notre Dame football team's mindset of like, No. We're not trying to just finish this off. We're trying to be national champions. And let's do the things that make us national champions and not simply surviving and advancing kind of thing. Like I want that mindset to be different because I think they can get to that point, but it's not given, right? It's not a given. They could lose to USC on the road. They absolutely could, right? And it could be yucky weather in New York on that terrible field, and they could get in trouble against them. Like, make sure that you are taking care of your business and not just riding on the laurels of Texas A&M and Louisville or whatever it might be. And Marcus Freeman strikes me as he's taking that tone with them, just because he's getting all upset about the littlest things, which is, I think, sending a message of like, hey, I'm not going to accept a penalty here, Sam Pendleton. I'm not, even if it's for a good reason. And at the end of the day, like, I'm not accepting this. This is not good enough. This is not okay. Right. And so I think that's where the mindset can go. And I hope that's where they are, because I think this year they have a chance. They have a chance to make a run if they put themselves in position to make that run. And I think that's where they kind of need to be. So.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, they definitely have a chance to make a run. If I was going to say, like, the reason why it's funny, because they had this thing on game day this week where Nick Saban was talking about, like, CFP worthy, and then it was like contenders, whatever. And, he mentioned Notre Dame, and he said CFP worthy, but they weren't on the scale of the contender, national champion contender, which I think is, like, probably fair based on everything. But he also had some other teams there that I was like, I don't know if they're a real contender. But I would say that the reason why Notre Dame can go on a run, but the only way that they are going to win it, would have a real shot at winning it, is they have to be more explosive on offense in the passing game. And if they're not, then they won't win. They won't win those games. So, and we've kind of talked about, a long bit about, like, well, they need this to happen or that to happen. This guy needs to be this. And really, they just need to kind of find it in those
however
games,
it happens.
however it has to happen.
It does.
That's really the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That is the thing that they are missing. It is their big hole right now that they don't have in their offense, and they need to be able to find it. So I think that's a good place to end it, Jamie. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whatever it is, we're going to go live. We'll be back on Thursday talking about Virginia and that game and what we can expect from them. Chris Tyree will be back, how big of a role he'll play, and things of that nature. So have a good rest of your day, everyone. We'll talk to you on Thursday. Keep hitting and hustling.